ThunderCage has been a fan favourite in the game for as long as the servers have been up, and the story guided you to get your first copy over a year ago. It's easy to use, highly mobile, and a fantastic mobbing weapon. The bunny in a gun ticks a lot of boxes for players of all skill levels. Now in the latest hotfix though, the ThunderCage got a chunky buff, giving it intrinsic elemental damage, as well as buffing the damage its unique effect deals to nearby enemies. And trust me, this gun is no slouch. So in this video we'll be breaking down my testing and go-to setup for the ThunderCage, talking all things to do with modules to get the most out of it, weapon cores to farm for, and then lastly which descendants can really benefit from its power. Of course, if all that sounds good to you, then what are we waiting for? Let's get to it. Now while it's not much of a looker, the ThunderCage packs a deadly punch in its bite-sized package. It's got decent firearm attack, but low mag count and fire rate usually would make this unimpressive on paper, but once it's paired with its electric attack of 9,176 per shot and a crit damage multiplier of 2x, the gun was made to hit hard and wipe groups before they could react. Now looking at its unique effect, the cage emits a burst of electricity after every bullet kill, causing damage in a 5 meter radius and hitting for 400% of your firearm damage. Now it's interesting that while the perforator didn't benefit from elemental damage in its effect in the previous video, the ThunderCage's effect actually does, meaning that it's worth us boosting that value so that we can hit as hard as possible. I'd be kind of curious if this is down to the element being on the cage's item card compared to that of perforator that doesn't have anything natively. So what can we do to boost this shockwave damage further? Well, based on my testing, anything that would boost your damage output, including multipliers like weak points, are going to be effective here. Going firearm is a great shout, so is matching elemental attack and the priority mod. Crit damage is a huge way of boosting that damage due to that 2x multiplier, so mixing everything all together is going to make the gun quite potent. So that leads us to the build, where we'll kick it off with the firearm attack side of things with the usual pair of rifle reinforcement and action and reaction, giving us that nice firearm attack platform to be able to play with, and then be able to boost up everything else that's going to be coming after. Next up we'll talk elements, and with the native electric attack on the gun, it only makes sense for us to lean into this more for our generic use. Electric enhancement does make the list, but due to the other needs of the gun and running out of slots, we won't be running priority furthering our elemental attack. Fire rate up and have aiming do make the list, offering faster shots and more DPS, which also then helps us out with the explosion. Ideally, we always want to be aiming for those weak points to land that devastating shockwave to anyone that's unfortunate to stand nearby. Our next 4 slots will be taken up by our crit package though, really taking advantage of that 2x multiplier for the insane DPS. Now for our crit rates, we're going to be rocking better insight and edging shot, giving us the most rate possible from our mods, but also slightly hurting our firearm attack, which is fine, and then along with the damage mods of better concentration and concentration priority, getting us to a whopping 194.8% increase, which then gets thrown into the 2x multiplier and pushes us closer to that 400% crit increase on paper. Now for our last slot, we have a few options depending on how you wish to run the gun. Expand weapon charge will give the gun 12 more bullets in the mag for blasting away with, meaning that you're going to have less downtime with your reloads. Weak point sight will further your weak point multiplier, which is then going to be, while it isn't necessarily going to be the biggest increase in the world, it is still going to be boosting your explosion damage for those easier one-shots in mobs. But really my favourite slot in here, and the one I'm actually using on most of the builds that you can see here, especially with how I've currently built it up and cored the weapon, is going to be firing Fiesta, giving us 3 seconds of unlimited rounds when reloading on a 15-second cooldown. Now not only will this help you out if a large mob does appear, relieving you of reloads and downtime for that stretch, it also doubles to save you ammo, meaning that your count will last for much longer and you won't need to struggle finding drop rounds on the floor. All 3 suggestions absolutely work in this build, but I do think that Fiesta is where the party's at. Now when it comes to the substats, the cage is primarily a crit based weapon designed to hit hard and maximise that unique effect. So with this in mind, running a combination of firearm attack, crit rate and crit damage are going to be instant locks, with a roll of electric attack being probably the best go-to for most encounters. As the gun doesn't have a purple slot when it comes to the cores, it doesn't make sense for us to run faction firearm attack, as better core options absolutely exist. As well, it's not really worth us running multi-hit chance or damage either here, as the multiplier for that damage is going to be abysmally low. So that allows us to be able to swap over to the core side of things, and cores wise we have access to 1 free slot, 1 orange slot, 1 red slot, 1 green slot, and also 1 yellow. We might as well just kind of call this gun the Skittles when it has this much of a rainbow included. Now our yellow is probably one of the easier ones to lock in, with recoil massively helping the gun to stay on target. Even a blue roll on this is huge for staying on target, making the weak point damage that much easier for us to activate and also benefit from. Now technically yes, sprint speed is also working here for mobility. I do think that the ThunderCage is probably geared towards more holding down that trigger rather than actually using it as a stat stick for movement, so the more that you can hit when you're aiming, especially with the fire rate that we're going to be going for, the better it's going to feel for you in your hands. Now the green core is probably just as easy, with fire rate being an absolute solid choice for us to be able to go for. This gets us even more value if we do run that of firing Fiesta, allowing us to be able to spray an insane amount of fire down range before those 3 seconds are going to be up. Alternatively, if you are looking to use other mods over that of Fiesta, a mag size roll is not going to be a bad shout, once again reducing that need to reload and then also having less downtime. When it comes to the red slot though, the 2x multiplier on the crit damage is just too good to pass up on, meaning that a roll into crit damage is going to be fantastic, especially if you pair this with a gun descendant that can also boost up the crit rate quite nicely, making it feel much more consistent. For the orange core, the choice is going to be a case of will you use this for general play or Colossus fights, and based on our sub rolls that we've gone for above, I'm sure you can guess that this is going to be a generic cut use type of gun, so we'll be slotting in a firearm attack roll, bumping us up by 80% of our firearm damage on base. And so that just kind of leaves us with our free slot, with a couple of good options popping up once again. If you were going to be using this ideally for Glay, then a second fire rate core would do absolute wonders for this gun, making it the perfect spray weapon for mobbing. For anyone else though that can't really take full advantage of that fire rate, crit damage and elemental attack are going to be the next best things, with elemental attack being my go-to for this build. While running a second crit damage roll would be huge and push the gun over a 10x crit damage threshold, going for more elemental attack means that we'll have better base figures to throw into the calcs, along with boosting our attack for the explosion to work from. Slotting in an electric attack core here has done wonders for the gun, and it absolutely made mincemeat of all the enemies inside of Purge 9. Now, as we've covered already, the cage really starts to shine once it's introduced to a Descendant that can really boost its crit rate, making those extra multipliers much more consistent. We've got characters like Haley, Enzo and Blair that can really put in some work with this gun, getting its crit rate closer to 90%, if not pushed all the way over to 100%. Now of course Glay can also do some nasty work with this gun, making it into a minigun of sorts with a fantastic mobbing effect, destroying hordes of enemies as they try to close the gap, but even at base with this kind of setup, the cage has around about 40 to 41% crit rate, making it still fairly reliable to use on any Descendant that needs a weapon to be able to mop up the masses. It won't necessarily be the best fit in all kind of scenarios, but it's absolutely usable and absolutely viable with the amount of damage that it can chuck out. And with all that out of the way, that wraps it up for my video for the current ThunderCage build, the workhorse of the SMG category. For the longest time I thought the cage was going to be wasting away, wishing to see the day for its comeback, ever since Bunny, Freyna and Inez demolished the mobbing scene and no longer had a need for it. Now was the buff enough to be able to bring it out of retirement? Well, it's not got homing projectiles going for it, but the gun feels fantastic again, and it is absolutely worth a slot in your loadout should you need that mobbing help. But this is a section I want to hear from you. How are you finding the weapons after the buff patch? Have you tried the ThunderCage since the hotfix? And then lastly, who do you currently have it equipped to? Let me know all that and more down below. Massive thank you for making your way to the end of the video. As I always say, keep yourselves safe, keep yourselves well, and I'll see you all on the next video.